Hey, it's David Summers. Welcome in. It's a special Studcast. Ron's tribute to Terry Funk. The wrestling world lost a legend and a Hall of Famer this week. Terry Funk died in a hospital near Phoenix at the age of 79. Ron Fuller Welch, the Tennessee stud, has wrestled Terry Funk probably 10 times and literally been around the world with Terry Funk. And Ron, you were saying that as we record this on this day, you've known Terry Funk for 50 years exactly. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, actually, and kind of odd, man, how this all went down. So on August 23rd, 2023, Terry Funk, man, one of the greatest wrestlers that ever lived. Obviously, everybody knows what's happened now, and he's gone. He's not with us anymore, but in my opinion, he left a legacy that'll never be duplicated. To me, Terry was so much more than just a wrestler. He was a personal friend for 50 years. And he was one of the most unusual characters I have ever met, and I bet there's probably 100 more wrestlers who would say the same thing about him, and about his being an unbelievable character. So growing up in the sport, I'd heard about his father, Dory Sr., his brother, Dory Jr., and obviously about Junior's crazy little brother, Terry Funk. And I'm doing this special tribute on the day after Terry died. And gosh, this is an amazing story here, but it is very true. And people can look it up if they can't believe it. Exactly 50 years ago from this day is the day I met Terry Funk for the first time in person.
Wow. Wow.
It's amazing, man. And it was on a Friday night, August the 24th, 1973. I was in St. Louis, Missouri, the home of the National Wrestling Alliance president, Sam Muchnick. I was only 25 years old. And I was going to be, on that night, the youngest wrestler ever to be in a main event in the legendary Kiel Auditorium at 25 years old. And I was wrestling against the former NWA world champion, Gene Koninsky, for the Missouri championship belt that Koninsky had. I was in a dressing room by myself. And I had never met Terry, but I knew of his family and all this. But I'm in a dressing room by myself. Kiel Auditorium was a massive complex. It had a concert hall on one side, and then a building that held more than 10,000 on the other side. Mm-hmm. So I was in the catacombs of this building down below in the basement area, and I was in a dressing room by myself. And I had butterflies in my stomach, because I was headed into a darn big match for a 25-year-old. Truly amazing to be doing what I was going to be doing that night. So, and somewhere in this back of this building, butterflies in my stomach, all keyed up, about to wrestle the biggest match so far in my 3-year career at that point. And then when I looked up, there standing in the doorway to my dressing room was Terry Funk. Now, Terry was 4 years older than me, and he was already a huge star in the sport at this point, and he introduced himself, and he sat down in a chair across from me, and, he knew what was on the card, because when you went into Kiel Auditorium, they passed you out a program. Everybody got a program. You got to see who all was on the card, and there was stars from all over the country. It was the greatest place you could wrestle. Was in St. Louis's Kiel Auditorium. And so he knew who was on the card already, and he knew I was in the main event, and they obviously knew how anxious, man, I had to be about what was ahead for me that night, So he knew a great deal about my family's history in the sport. He started out, we just talked, and we talked about how similar our lives were, which they really were. We both had one brother, and they wrestled. We both grew up with a father that was a professional wrestler. And, we both talked about how difficult that was, being young boys, and your daddy was a wrestler, and you had to be tough, or you're supposed to be tough. We talked about my opponent for that night, and his reputation for being stiff, and he had already learned. He'd already learned that, Terry. He'd already wrestled Gene Koninsky many times, and he knew I was about to find out for myself what that was going to be all about. And he had actually told me the story of watching his brother Dory Sr. beat Koninsky for the NWA World Title. So basically, Terry went out of his way to come and find me and sit down with me and help me calm my nerves. And I thought afterward what a great person he was for doing that. I mean, it was very, very thoughtful of him. First time I ever met him. And that conversation that we had that night set us up for one of the closest relationships I ever had in the sport.
Wow.
I had no idea. 8 days later, this is pretty freaky too. 8 days later, after this night I'm wrestling, I'm going to come back to St. Louis for the television, and I'm going to, for the first time ever, wrestle Terry Funk on TV.
Whoa.
So, I mean, it's a strange story, but boy, it's all there. I mean, it's history, and people can look it up. I saw Terry in the Florida Territory. That's where I lived at that point in 1973, and it's where I worked several times after that. And he and his brother, they came to Florida Territory. They were stars there, man. They were stars wherever they went. I mean, it didn't make any difference what state it was, what part of the country, or what part of the world. And the next time I wrestled him was going to be 3 years later, on October 10th, 1976. And by this point, I had got my own territory, and we were going to be wrestling in my Southeastern Territory. We were going to be wrestling for the NWA World Title that he held. And I learned as time went on that Terry had a unique style in the ring. And no two matches with Terry Funk were ever the same. You never knew what to expect, and that was what made him so unique and totally different.
Wow. So that was the first match. Is there anything special, anything that stands out? How about butterflies for that first match? What stands out, or what is there about that you really remember that you'll never forget?
Oh, Jace, I mean, obviously it's an NWA World Championship match. It's in a sold-out Coliseum. And it was one of the first sellouts we ever had in the Coliseum. Tremendous crowd, and so the thing I remember about Terry is I went to the ring first, and Terry, he's the champion, so you go first. I mean,
right.
The champion is the champion, and he deserves the spotlight in the end.
Yeah.
And Terry came out of the back of the Coliseum where the big black curtain is that I talk about all the time in Studcast, and he took 10 minutes, it seemed like, to get to the ring.
I've heard you tell this story on one of your Studcasts. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, he just stopped. As soon as they started to boo, he stopped. And then he would look around the whole building, and then he would walk 10 steps. They would boo again. He would stop. I thought he would never get to the ring. And then he got to the ring, and when they made the announcement, they announced us both. And then we came to the middle of the ring. The referee checked us to see that we were clean. And then he said, okay, they rang the bell. I turned to go back to the corner. I was going to turn to go back to the corner. And he says to me, now, and this was very strange, but the match you knew it was going to be a tremendous match because the building was standing up when they rang the bell to start the match. Wow. I mean, they were ready. And he said to me, he says, don't go back to the corner. He goes, and then he walked up and got right in my face. And he said to me, back up. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, I'm so fired up. This is a big moment. I didn't know where this was headed, right? So I hesitated. I didn't want to back up. I'm like, no, this is my town. I mean, no. And then he says, back up. And then finally I took a step back. And then he stepped right up in my face again. Back up. I took another step back. The building started to, you could just hear the fans beginning to rumble. It's like, wow, what the heck's going on here?
Mhm.
And then he backed me all the way slowly into my corner. And then he said, all right, step forward. And I backed him across the ring. Uh, he had been probably in the building, in the ring. We'd been in there, or him trying to get there. We're probably 15 minutes in, and we hadn't touched each other. By the time I backed him into his corner, he stepped out of the ring, and that building exploded.
You could cut it with a knife. That's and you haven't even touched each other yet.
We haven't touched, and
Wow.
so that was the beginning of the match. The match was a tremendous match, and at the end of it, we had an ending in which the referee got bumped out of the ring. Then Terry came running at me. I ducked him. He went over my shoulder. The referee came back into the ring. I was still in the ring. Terry came into the ring. I jackknifed him, and the referee counted him out. But the referee that had been out on the floor, the second referee came down. And he came down. They raised my hand. They handed me the world title, the belt. And that building was going absolutely crazy. The second referee conferred with the first one and then pantomimed to the crowd, know that I threw Terry over the top rope. But he had really gone over my head and went out on his own. So they took the belt away from me, okay? And at this point, Ronnie Garvin and I had been vying for who was going to get this championship match. Ronnie Garvin came down to the ring, and I think I put the toehold on Terry, and then Ronnie Garvin stomped me off, and he jumped off in my throat about 4 or 5 times. Crowd was so mad, so upset that they came rushing to the ring. There was no way for them to get out of the ring. Terry couldn't get out. The referee couldn't get out. Ronnie couldn't get out.
Wow.
Because the crowd was just right there at the ringside. Then Ronnie kind of forced his way, got a little people back for enough space that Terry could get out with him. Terry told me later on, he says, Ronnie was one of the most scared I've ever been. He goes, I thought they were going to get us. So that's the way that first match with him went down.
How did things go with Terry, like, after the match? What was that like?
Well, I got sent to the hospital. Okay, I went to the hospital. I still have a knot on my throat where Garvin jumped off the top rope, and that still bothers me 40 years later, 50 years later. So I got carried to the hospital. I didn't actually get to see Terry, but later on he contacted me, and he told me, kind of like the Harley Race story, when I first paid Harley on this big crowd that is going to happen 6 months after this match. I'm going to be wrestling Harley for the world title. And Harley said, got the money, and he said, Ron, I'll come work for you anytime. And Terry's told me the same thing. Ron, gosh, what a great payoff you gave me. So that was a great thing to happen, and so he's going to go on to become a star, Terry, in southeastern Knoxville. He probably made 5 or 6, maybe even 7 more matches, and none of them as world champion because he had lost the title to Harley Race, but he was over in Knoxville, unbelievable. I mean, the fans were crazy for Terry Funk. He was absolutely a phenom there. And then, oddly enough, I never booked Terry in the southeastern Gulf Coast territory. And looking back on it now, I regret it, I think before I came there and bought the former owners out, I think Terry worked in the Gulf Coast territory a couple of times, but I'm not sure he ever did. But they never got to see Terry Funk down there, and I really regretted that because Terry he was spectacular.
Wow.
So my next encounter with Terry was when he called me. Him and his brother were on the phone, and they called me in 1983. This was years later. And he said, Ron, we want to invite you to come to Japan. We have a tournament there once a year. It's 3 weeks long. It's a tag team tournament. And it's, he says everything sells out. It's one of the biggest things of the year. And he goes, we have a partner for you if you want to come, and that's going to be Barry Windham. So I jumped at the opportunity. Not just I always thought Barry Windham was a great wrestler, but then I really wanted to spend more time with Terry. I wanted to have an opportunity to spend more time with Terry. So I arrived in Tokyo on November 24th, 1983. I was right about, I was absolutely right about maybe being able to spend more time with Terry. I found out on the very first trip that the entire crew traveled together every day on the tour. So, and the first trip we made was on the bullet train to Osaka, Japan. So, once we got into the train station, it was like crazy. I found out how quickly and how popular the Funk Brothers were in that country. I mean, everybody in the crew, we were all blown away. Me and Barry, particularly, his first trip too, by how the fans just mobbed Junior and Terry. They were like movie stars.
Wow.
Yeah. And they entertained the Japanese like they were movie stars.
Entertain them. Elaborate a little bit on that. Tell us a little bit more about how the Funk Brothers entertained the Japanese. What kind of stuff did they do?
Well, they were crazy, man. They had been there for so many years, and everywhere they went, everybody just focused on them, and they watched them continuously. So the first time that I saw them do something really crazy is we got on an airplane, and then on the airplane, Terry went up to the front of the plane, sat in the first class area, and Junior went toward the back of the plane. And I couldn't figure out what the heck is that all about, why ain't they sitting together, and they certainly could afford a ticket or wherever they wanted to sit. But when the plane landed, then Terry jumps up in the front of the plane. They both wore cowboy hats, they were recognized as cowboys. And so Terry gets up on the front of the plane, and everybody's standing up to start to get their bags in overhead compartment. And Terry looks up and he starts screaming back to the back of the plane to Junior. He goes, Junior, I can't find my cowboy hat. Right? So all the Japanese are like, they're all scared to death, right? Here's these two Americans having a conversation from one end of the plane to the other, right? And Junior says, well, keep looking, Terry, keep looking, and then everybody, so then Terry gets all the Japanese to start looking for his cowboy hat, right, in the overhead compartment. So they're searching through the cowboy, looking for the cowboy hat, and Terry slides off the plane. Nobody even sees him leave, right? And now the rest of us, we can't get off the plane because all the Japanese are trying to find Terry's hat, right? And Terry's even gone, right? So it's like, what is this all about? So then we finally get the Japanese to go on and get their bags and get off. We go down to the luggage, and the luggage has this was in 83, but they were way ahead of us in Japan with a lot of things. They were on the luggage rack that would go around, rotated all around. And so the first bag that came out of the back part, the baggage part, was Terry Funk laying on his back with his cowboy hat over his face. So he went 2 or 3 times all around. He never got off the deal. And all the Japanese were just great. They were just laughing like, "Oh man, this is great, funniest thing we've ever seen," right? So that's kind of one of the stories that happened.
Hey, I got to mention this on tnstud.com. That's the Stud's official website, tnstud.com. Under Super Studcast, Super Studcast number 6 is in way more detail than what Ron just told it. It's called Japan 1983, Super Studcast number 6. And then Super Studcast number 7 is still more about Terry Funk and Stan Hansen on top of that. So that's one of the stories I'll never forget. It's fun to hear you tell it again. So any other stories? What else you got?
Well, then probably a week later, they did this thing in the airport, and they were in the lobby, and it was huge, thousands of Japanese there, and going and trying to catch the trains and whatever. And since there was a bunch of us wrestlers sitting in that one area, and Terry and Junior, that's all it took to have a crowd. Well, they were there, and there was a mob of people. So all of a sudden, and I'd never seen him do this before, Terry says to Junior, he goes, "Hey, let's play the game, Junior. Let's play the game." And so, I'm like, what are they talking about now? What are these guys going to do now? So Terry goes over to the wall. And the big, huge lobby in this, I think it was a train station. Actually, it was a monster lobby. And so Junior then looks around for the little Japanese people, and then he picks somebody out, and he goes and gets them, and he brings them up about 20 feet away from where Terry is by the wall, and he tells Terry to, draw the circle on the wall. He speaks English, but the Japanese don't know what he's saying. Mm-hmm. So Terry draws this imaginary circle with his finger on the wall, and Junior then takes the person that's standing there, the Japanese, and he puts their hand over their eyes so that they can't see, and he says, "Stick your hand out," and basically go over there and try to stick your finger in the imaginary circle. Well, they walk across there, and they and obviously they don't get they don't hit the circle for it, but and the fans, everybody there, there's a little reaction. It's not much, it's like a small little, "Oh, well, that's," and then they talking to each other, and they go, "Now you looking, you see her, they're looking for somebody in particular, right?" I figured that out right away. Then they find another person, they bring them over, they do the routine, they don't get the circle, the whole deal. And then finally, about the third person, they pick out this little tiny Japanese woman. She got the little pad on her back. She's all bent over. She's so embarrassed, and they bring her up there. Junior brings her up there, and Terry's at the wall. And so he says, "Okay, Terry, go ahead, draw the circle." So Terry draws a little imaginary circle on the wall. Everybody's seen the gimmick now at this point, and then Junior puts the little lady's hand over her eyes, and he gets her hand out in front of her, and then she starts walking. As soon as she starts walking, Terry drops his pants. It just pulls him right down over his butt cheeks, right? He's got no underwear on. And the building exploded. The Japanese went crazy, and the little woman never stopped. She just kept walking in that direction, and she had her finger pointed at, and boy, me and Barry, everybody in the building. I mean, everybody that saw it, they were all going crazy. And the closer she got, she was aiming. She was going to hit his. It was going to be a good place for her finger to be. And so when she got there, she actually touched his big fat butt, and then she stopped, and then she dropped her head. And oh, when she dropped her hand, the crowd popped again. Oh, she went, covered her face. She was so embarrassed. I mean, so that was the kind of crazy stuff they did, man, to keep you. And you had to have that in Japan because it was so hard to go over there and to deal with not being able to eat American food and not being able to speak to anybody. It was tough working in Japan.
Well, I've heard you talk about Terry a lot, and you guys became really good friends, and you can tell the relationship was definitely there. See, can you remember in Studcast number 7, you actually talked to Terry? Have you got Terry telling stories on Super Studcast number 7?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Terry's telling stories. He actually is on there with the part of it is with Hansen.
Yes, Stan Hansen. Yes.
Live, and and Terry trained Stan Hansen.
So you got the two of them on the phone at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, pretty amazing. I mean, amazing stuff, great stuff. It's that's classic. No, I don't know where anybody will ever be able to find that type of stuff again.
Wow.
It's in that number 7, and then number 6 is mostly about the entire trip to Japan. But so yeah, but and I think I said, I kind of said earlier, Dave, that they were kind of like movie stars. Terry, Junior and Terry, and Terry, and that kind of fit really good because Terry had already become a movie star back in the States at this time.
Yeah.
He'd been in movies, right? He'd already done a part in the movie Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze.
Yep.
He did, I think, one called Hell's Kitchen with Sylvester Stallone.
Yep.
And on this tour, he had a part coming up when he got back to the States after the tour was over in Rhinestone Cowboy, where he is supposed to be singing a song. So Terry carried his guitar with him everywhere. On this trip, every train trip, every plane, he had his guitar and he was practicing his song.
All right, I don't remember him being in Rhinestone Cowboy. Did he sing? What was he doing in the movie?
Well, it turned out that he didn't get to sing his song, man. That's why he didn't get to end up in the movie.
Okay. Wow.
Well, and then so I'll tell you what happened, and this is kind of tied in with what I just told, the little game they played with him dropping his pants and everything, Mm-hmm. So I was in a hotel. This was toward the end of the tour, and these hotels are really nice in Japan. They got little doorbells on every door, hotel doors, ding ding ding. So they don't come in on you, so somebody came to my door, and it was late. It was probably 2 or 3 in the morning, and ding 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 ding, and I was like. And I was like, well, what the heck? They can't be coming to make up the bed. What are they doing? And so I didn't even get out of bed. I said, go on. No, right? Go, right? And ding, ding. And then you heard this little voice out there, only wanted mishi masa masa. Sound like a little Japanese girl, right?
Right.
And I'm like, go away. Only no money, mishi mas, ding, 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 ding. So finally I get up and I go over and I open the door and it's Terry.
There you go.
And he's got 2 6-packs of beer. And he goes, Ron, can I come in? He's all depressed. He's got tears in his eyes. Ron, I got some bad news. And so I go, Terry, what happened, man? Did somebody in your family hurt or what? And he goes, no. He goes, Ron, he goes, I got fired from the movie. and I said, well, why? Why'd they fire you, Terry? I mean, you got your song, you've been working on it and everything. I mean, you're going to be a big star in this, And he goes, yeah, I thought I was too, And I said, well, what did you do? You must have done something wrong. And he said, Ron, he goes, maybe, he said, we were all, all together, the whole cast and everything, and they were talking about what they're going to do here and what they're going to do there. And he goes, and there was a little lull in the action and everything. And he said, I thought I got this stuff. Yeah, I did the me and Junior's little drop your pants deal, right?
Oh, God.
In front of all the crew, right? And I go, no. I said, Terry, are you serious? And he goes, yeah, but the worst part, Ron, he goes, is the director. The director's the guy that had over with his hand over his eyes. So,
Oh, my God.
he had made a fool out of the director of the movie, and obviously he lost his shot at being in Rhinestone Cowboy.
Wow.
That was typical Terry stuff.
Wow.
So it was the last night of the tour, basically, and Ric Flair came to Tokyo for one match, right? Flew him to Tokyo for one match, and after the match was over, me and Flair, Dory Jr. and Terry, we went out after the matches to a section of in Japan in Tokyo there called Roppongi, which is like a nightclub section, so we had a little party, man.
So the four of you are out in Tokyo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Roppongi. Yeah.
All right. So what happened in the nightclub deal? What was that like?
Well, it was in the wintertime, right? So Flair shows up. He's got a cashmere top coat, man.
Right.
And geez, I don't know what he paid for it, but it was pretty nice. And so when we went into this one club, we sat down, the four of us, same table and everything, and everybody in there knows them, right? They reckon, oh yeah, they're pointing over there and the whole deal, and then so one of the singers, they got a band up there on the stage, and one of the singers in the band comes down and he asked them to come up on the stage, right? I want to introduce them,
Right.
Terry and Junior, right?
Yeah.
Right? And so they get up there, and then instead of them leaving the stage, Terry says, Junior, he gets talking real loud. He goes, Junior, let's sing for him. Let's sing for him.
Oh, God. Okay.
So they start singing Home, Home on the Range. Right? They're one of those old slow Western songs, right? And then the Japanese start, they're just loving it. They're just clapping. They're like crazy. They love it. Now, and then they try to get them to, come on now, everybody, home, home. So then they finally come off the stage. And once they come off the stage, then Junior and Flair's talking business. He's working in Japan. He's come there for, and they're actually having a business conversation. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Terry grabs Flair's cashmere top coat, and he goes, they've got these huge speakers that are 8, 10, 12 feet tall, different heights, and he goes climbs up on top of one of the speakers, and he's got Flair's top coat, and he's swinging it around and around in circles, and when it goes down to the bottom, to where his feet is, it just catches all the dirt. You can see the dust that's flying off. He's dancing up there, and everybody in the place is going crazy. And I give Flair a little pop on the shoulder. I said, "Check him out." And he goes, "Oh, that's my brand new coat." So it is the typical type of deal, man. When we left out of there, we on our way back, probably 3, 4, I don't know what time it was in the morning, we end up at this little cafeteria-like thing, a little small diner. And the doors had a pad. When you stepped on them, the doors would go, shh, they'd make a noise like that, and they'd open back and let you in, right?
Right.
And so Terry's in the front of the line, and so when we step on the pad, the doors open, and And Terry, everybody in the place looks, and Terry steps inside, and he throws his hands up in the air, and he goes, "Hey!" like that, right? And so everybody in the place goes, "Hey!" back, right? So then while we're there, the whole time we're there, every time somebody comes in or leaves, then that was the deal. Everybody throw your hands up. Hey, hey. So
Wow.
it was it was a real blast being with those dudes, man.
I gotta ask again at tnstud.com about, and I think it's number 7, Super Studcast number 7, Terry Funk and Stan Hansen. Tell me again. So you had both of them on the phone. This has been a few years ago, but this had to be some really fun stuff.
Oh man, it was unbelievable. And I wasn't aware when we set the deal up to record it that they had a little problem with each other. You know,
the two of them.
Yeah, they had something had gone on bad between them, and so Stan did the first part of the broadcast with me, and then I was going to bring Terry on to do the last part. But I thought, I got Stan here and I got Terry here. Gosh, and Terry trained Stan. Let's get them both on. So we got them both on. And once Terry found out that he was talking to Stan, he was like, "Oh, wait a minute." He was like, and it was an odd little moment.
So they had like a personal beef between the two of some kind.
Yeah, they had a personal beef between the two of them. And Terry was saying, "I'll kick your," it started to get a little bit. I was like, "Okay, guys."
Not an awkward moment at all. And
listen, it was a little bit of an awkward moment. To say the least.
You can check it out at tnstud.com, tnstud.com, under Super Studcast, Super Studcast number 7, Terry Funk and Stan Hansen. It's only $2.99. All right. Anything more that you want to add, Stud? This has been a ton of fun.
Well, man, I could talk all day, man, and I've never run out of great things to say about Terry. Wow, there was nothing like him. He could do it all. He made these classic interviews in the Florida days with Dusty Rhodes, and he used to call Dusty an egg-sucking dog. And he'd wear these T-shirts into the territory, wear them into the ring with this stuff on them about Dusty being an egg-sucking dog. And, he was just a tremendous character. He could do it all, man. He could have a classic match. He could have a hardcore barbed wire match. I saw him do moonsaults off of Coliseum balconies, man, on the concrete. He just gave his body and his soul to the sport, man. And in the end, like a lot of great wrestlers that go too far, he paid an awful price for it. Before his death, and basically, I have to say this: I had the pleasure and the honor, man, to talk to him. Basically, about 3 or 4 months ago, and I had a chance to speak with him, and he'd been out there in that hospital, in that home there for a couple of years. And it didn't sound good, but gosh, he still made me laugh. I mean, we still laughed and had a good time. And there'll never be another Terry Funk, and he is and always will be, to me, an American hero, man. And he was an unforgettable force in the ring and an absolute credit to the sport.